time to celebrate Bob Barker with Roger Neal, who for many, many, many years was his publicist. And he's a great friend of the Jim Masters Show live series. He's one of the most well-known and beloved publicists in all of Hollywood. Roger, thank you for taking time. I know you've been on all of the media, the television networks, and so much more, sharing your memories of Bob. Thanks so much for joining us, my friend.
Well, Jimmy, it's great to be with you, and I'm honored to be a part of the group. I saw the group in the green room as we were enjoying our lobster. I almost had too much, but I had to stop myself a little bit. And you're first class all the way.
I appreciate that.
It has been an honor. I started with Bob Barker, hired me in 1987. And I represented him from 87 to 94, and then again starting in 2020. But I was handling the Miss USA and Miss Universe pageant telecast for CBS starting in 1987. And I met Bob Barker on the floor at the Cow Palace, where we did the Miss USA pageant telecast that year. And I grew up watching him on Truth or Consequences and hosting the Miss USA and Miss Universe pageants and watching him on the Tournament of Roses parades and The Price is Right when I was a teenager. And here I found myself handling the Miss USA pageant for CBS, and here I'm standing face to face with Bob Barker. It was a thrill for me. And of course, the day I met him, we had to start working out this situation with this fur controversy that came up there. But all the press that we did, and I got he and the pageant both through that. And it was the highest ratings that Miss USA pageant has ever had, never been topped. #1 for the night, the week, the month, and the #3 network special for the year, beating out Barbara Walters that year. And so at the end of that show, Barker turned to me and said, "You're hired. I haven't had this much media coverage in years." And that's what started our working relationship and our friendship over all of these years. So it was a high honor for me to work with him both times, and a high honor to be able to handle the publicity for his passing.
What a wonderful photo we have of the two of you shown on the screen here on the program. When was this taken, Roger?
So this photo was taken 9 years ago. Bob Barker is the same age as the Hollywood sign.
Ah, wow.
This was the 90th anniversary of the Hollywood sign we did this at the W Hotel, and Barker and I both were there, and we took a photo together. And I can't show you the last photo I took with him, but I will treasure it forever. It was in December of last year, around his birthday. He was 99. And I went to see him, and we had a wonderful conversation. And I took a photo with him, and I would treasure that photo forever. And of course, I saw him much more recent than that. But that was something that I'll always treasure.
And don't you have the Emmy to the left of you? Isn't that part of The Price is Right?
I do, yes. This was the first Emmy that Barker won, 1980, 81 for game show host for The Price is Right. Honored to have it. Nancy Burnett said she knew that Barker would have wanted me to have that. And so it is treasured, and this will go on loan to the Hollywood Museum, because the Hollywood Museum here in Los Angeles has a Bob Barker exhibit. We were gearing it up for his 100th birthday, but it's now open, the exhibit, and that will go on loan to them for a while. But it's something that I will forever be grateful to have, because he was a big part of my career, and I was honored. We made history together. I made history with him. From letting his hair go natural to all the things that we did together over all those years that I worked with him, both times. So, but the early years that I worked with him were the cruelty to animals that he exposed around 87 or 88, a movie Project X. We worked hard in animal rights. And when you go to the movie theaters and you see on the screen no animals were harmed in the making of this film, that's the work that Bob Barker and Nancy Burnett did. And I handled a lot of that publicity for them. And I'm proud of the work that I was able to do with him regarding that, which really changed a lot of things in Hollywood as far as treating animals and how you treat animals on the set of a movie or TV show. So I'm very proud of the work that that we did with Barker over those years.
I would imagine it's not just only losing a client, but also losing, after all those years, a friend, right?
He was a friend. When my twins were born, who are now 27 years old, Barker sent a handwritten note with U.S. savings bonds for each of them. And the note said, "I hope the world will be kind to you." And he signed it. And those savings bonds actually helped my twins, my son and daughter, get their first apartment when they grew up and wanted to get out on their own. So I would go to the house. I'd look like this in a meeting with him, and he'd be sitting at the pool with his shorts on, and he'd be nice and cool, and I'd be sweating, But that's okay. But that was Barker. He loved being out by his pool. He loved being in the sun. We had many meetings by the pool. Before I married the lady that I married, I was engaged around the time I was working with him the first time, and he agreed to be my best man and wanted my fiance's family. And when I picked him up, we went out and had dinner with her family. He wanted to meet them. He was just a very generous man. He was a good guy. What you saw on camera is what you saw not on camera. During the commercial breaks, and Randy will be able to tell you this a little later, he would talk to the audience. Sometimes he would go sit on the stage, at the edge of the stage after the taping, and he would talk with the audience. He loved his fans. They loved him. There was a love affair between he and his fans. And I think it showed when those people ran up and hugged him and kissed him. He didn't know what was coming. And that was just true. I think the true love that they had for Bob Barker. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of memories, a lot of phone calls. Just call him up and say, how's everything going? Call him up around his birthday time and say happy birthday to him. One of the things that struck me about Barker, he never forgot who gave him his break. Mm. Ralph Edwards.
Yeah.
And every year on the day that Ralph hired him, which was his big break, at 10 after 12 noon, he would show up to Ralph's home with a gift every single year until Ralph passed away. And that was never in the press. Nobody knew about that, but that was who Bob Barker was. He was just a good man.
On so many levels, Roger, and thank you for sharing that. I know it's very personal for you because we just lost him, a day or so ago, and it's fresh, and we really appreciate the wonderful memories. And we're going to welcome some of the other guests, but maybe you can think of one, too, another one that you want to share with us, somebody else that is a beloved game show host, radio host, multimedia talent, another legend in our crazy, competitive, nutty, but beloved business. You'll recognize this fine gentleman, another class act, another beloved American television host. Wink Martindale is joining us from his beautiful home in California. Sir, what an honor and a pleasure to have you. This is your return visit. You were here with your lovely wife, Sandy. We did a whole great chat with you. Thanks for popping on, especially as we're remembering one of your colleagues, the incomparable Bob Barker. Wink, thanks for stopping by our show.
Thank you very much, Jim. It was my distinct honor and pleasure to call Bob my friend for a number of years. Very honestly, we never got together very often socially. We never went out to dinner or had lunch together. But when we did get together, we enjoyed chatting about his career and my career and all that came in between. I think of names like Arthur Godfrey. I think of Art Linkletter. I think of the great Bill Cullen, and of course, Bob Barker as the very best at what they did in our industry. And it's really a pleasure to be included in your show today, Jim. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine, and I really appreciate you being here again. What is it about you? You've experienced this, Wink, on many different levels. There's just something about the way, the delivery, the presentation. You're all veterans of radio, of television, some of stage as well. And there's an affability, there's a congeniality, there's a warmth, there's something that you and Bob and so many others, those wonderful names you just described that were all beloved as well, that people just have connected with, and they feel like you are truly a part of their lives and of their family. What is it about all of that, maybe the time period, whatever it may be, that really has resonated with it? You've experienced, you've been on the receiving end of the love and the warmth for so many years, like Bob Barker. What do you think it is?
Well, I think that personally, in my own opinion, which I do respect, uh, to be a good host, or as with Bob, a great host, you have to like people. You have to be a person who is a people lover. Uh, that chance to uh, work with contestants on game shows, to when they walk out there and you have to meet them for the first time, and in 20 or 30 seconds, uh, let the audience know a little bit about them before you continue the game. That's all very, very important. I remember the first time I ever had the pleasure of meeting Bob was around 1972, and I had a show called Gambit that was premiering on the same day as The Price is Right and The Joker's Wild with Jack Barry. All three of those shows premiered on CBS the same day. So I got to know him that day. And then over a period of time, a number of years, I had the pleasure of having my dressing room and my stage right next door to his.
Mm.
So I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time just chatting with him. So I got to know Bob pretty well, and to know him was to really like to know him was to love him, really, because he was one of those people that I think the word that came to mind whenever the name Bob Barker was mentioned was the word superlative. He defined the meaning of preparedness. He never worked in front of a camera unless he was totally prepared to do what he was going to do on that particular show. It's just he was a one of a kind. There has never been, and there will never be another Bob Barker. And I think anybody in our business, all of his fans will agree to that.
We have a wonderful photo here, a TV guide with all of you on it. Look at this.
We were young once.
And TV guys, oh my God, we used to collect so many of those. Look at all the veterans on the screen there, folks, on the cover of that TV guide. And if you want to talk about lots of legendary talents and incredible entertainers from the fields of television and game shows and so much more, look at this photo.
Wow.
And you're in there too with Bob Barker and Alex Trebek and everybody that you can think of, Alan Ludden and Bert Convey, Richard Dawson, I mean, Gene Rayburn. Is it like a club? Was it like a club? Was it like a group of friends? What was it like? I mean, so many of you doing such extraordinary work, over the years, Wink. What do you think it is? And of course, there's your lovely wife, Sandy. We wanted to say happy anniversary. You guys celebrating an anniversary this month. So happy anniversary to you
Thank you
both.
very much. Thank you.
What do you think it is, as far as that camaraderie and that feeling of friendship with so many extraordinary hosts such as yourself and Bob Barker? What was that like?
Well, to be honest, we never really got together a lot as I said earlier, on a personal level, we never went out to dinner a lot. We never went out to lunch. We would see each other on set and get to know each other that way. But Bob Barker was one of those guys. He just loved what he did, and when I first met him at CBS and got to know him, uh, I I was just completely carried away because to me he was the best, the very pinnacle of his profession. So he loved people, he loved doing what he did, and it's just when I think about Bob Barker, I just get a warm feeling inside because that's the way he made everybody feel.
I have to say as well, Wink, you as well. Decades on television and still doing a terrific radio show as well. Tell us about that radio show.
Well, the radio show has been on the air for a number of years. I think I've been doing it well over 20 years, and it's called The History of Rock and Roll. And it's written by a wonderful guy, Gary Thoreau back east. He does a fantastic job of writing it. And Peter Gould, the gentleman who produces the show, puts it all together. It's heard around the world, the history of rock and roll, and that's exactly what it is. It tells the history of rock from that first night at WHBQ Radio in Memphis, Tennessee, when in walks Sam Phillips, founder of Sun Records, with a song called "That's All Right, Mama" by a truck driver named Elvis Presley. And that was the beginning that night when Dewey Phillips, the DJ, who did a show called Red Hot and Blue, put that thing on the turntable and played it once. Switchboard lit up, played it twice, played it 14 times in a row. People couldn't get enough of this singer named Elvis Presley. And "That's All Right, Mama." That was the beginning of rock and roll. And so from 1954 through right now and into tomorrow, who knows when it'll end? I guess when I end. But I enjoy doing it. It's called History of Rock and Roll, and it does indeed tell the history of rock right down through the years. Each 2-hour show is themed to a particular time or year. Like one show might be the hits of 1974, and we'll review all of those. So that's the way it is, and I hope that your viewers and your listeners will seek it out and listen to the history of rock and roll if it's heard in your market.
Absolutely. And I love the way you said the W in the call letters, like a true broadcaster. W.
W.
That's
One of
it.
the first things you learn. You say not W, not
Right.
W. It's double
Right.
U, like W.
We used to have that actually listed out on our radio station back in college. They said, this is how you say the W. And also the word news, like if you're saying action news or eyewitness news, that you would not say news, Nooze. It's eyewitness news,
Yeah.
instead of news. See, you learn something every day, folks, on the Jim Master Show. We're going to bring in on our other illustrious guests as well. But before we do, why and what did you love about being a beloved game show host and doing all the incredible shows that you have done over the years as well, Wink? You have also contributed to the happiness and joy of many a viewer over the years.
Well, that's true. I have either hosted or produced 21 different shows. Somebody said to me the other day, "What, you couldn't hold a job?" I said, "No, I never could." But when I got into the business, I just my first show was called "What's This Song?" It was a network show at NBC. It only lasted a year, but it got me launched into the world of game shows. And of course, when I did Tic Tac Dough, I did for about 13 years. That was my most successful show and bought me my home and a couple of cars. But it's just, I don't know. I always enjoyed working with people. I was a people person, like Bob Barker, and I love working with people. And I just therefore enjoyed what I did as a game show host, because if you didn't like people, you didn't want to be a game show host.
Absolutely, that's right. You wouldn't be smiling when giving away the washer and dryer, and
And let's not forget that brand new car.
that's right. I was just on a TV shoot in San Francisco, and I was looking for the year supply of rice-a-roni, and people were looking at me like, "The heck are you talking about?"
Are you talking about the San Francisco treat?
The San Francisco treat, exactly. Somebody that also affiliated with The Price is Right and also knew Bob Barker, the incomparable Randy West, who was also a guest on our show and did a full
Never
hour
heard
or
of
so with us.
Never heard of.
Terrific announcer, author, and so much more. A tried and true broadcaster through thick and thin. Randy, welcome back to the Jim Master Show on such a spur of the moment notice. I appreciate it.
It's a joy to see you and talk with you again, Jim. You run a fantastic program. You know what you're talking about, which is something I never do. But I fake it, but you actually do know so much about the business that it's a joy, truly, to talk, because you've walked the walk and talked the talk. You're a talented addition who have done a respectable amount of work, even at a couple of radio stations from the past that I worked at. So we have that commonality.
Radio, television, all of it. Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're saying. And as my father has always said, and, sage advice he gave me when I was like 7 years old, Jim, whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, ask them to please put it in writing and address it management. How true is that, huh?
There's very little I can say that you can use that the rest of the world doesn't already know.
So tell us about, for the edification of our viewing audience, your connection, of course, to The Price is Right and Bob Barker.
Well, first of all, this feels like old home week. Roger, publicist, and Wink is of the 23 shows that you did, I think 4 of them I was your announcer for. So you may have the big house and the multiple cars. I have a smaller house, but I'm putting your name. I'm putting your name on the go-kart instead of a real car. Yeah. I'm putting your name on the door, though, Wink. So thank you for that. And I had done obviously over a decade before Bob Barker shows with Wink and other of the iconic personalities that you mentioned, Dick Clark, and I'm not going to go through a litany, Chuck Woolery and people I'll forget, so I will stop there. But so I was familiar with the job and the milieu, if you will, how it all plays in the studio and the proper respect for a host and all that. But it was daunting, unlike any other job I had before, to walk in and know that I'm going to be second banana to the world's greatest MC. Now, in case you forget he's the world's greatest MC, of course, there was a plaque on his dressing room door that reminded you of that every day. And that, it's a little off-putting and daunting because this was the main room, not to speak, that any other show is lesser than, but this is the longest running and perhaps the most viewed cumulatively over the many decades. So a chance to be there was somewhat intimidating, I'll be honest. Now, I had first met Bob in 1980 or 81. I'm not quite clear on it. I was mentored into the business by Johnny Olson, and Johnny came to do that job in 1972. And I didn't get my way out to Los Angeles until 79, and was meeting with Johnny again, renewing that relationship. And of course, come down to the show where I was very welcome, but always very much in respect and awe of Bob, because I wasn't even in the business yet, just kind of a wannabe, hang around kind of guy. And I guess having the validation of being a friend of Johnny's went a long way towards Bob welcoming me to the show. But it was, so I felt the warmth and I felt the open friendliness of Bob immediately. And as been said here by Roger, that what you saw on camera is what you saw behind the scenes. Even though I was always a little standoffish about wanting to get, in his way, started to be a fan, where it becomes an encumbrance as opposed to just a joy for someone to admire your work. But when it came time to work with him, which was 2003, Bob remembered me from my various visits with Johnny Olson, starting in about 1980, 81, and with Rod Roddy. Now, Rod and I had worked together in radio back in the Northeast, WPTR in Albany, and many other stations. So Rod and I were friends as well. So I would visit the show to see Rod periodically, and of course, run into Bob. So there was a warmth, a familiarity, and I won't say a friendship, but certainly a relationship of saying hello and hi, how are you? But again, walking in 2003 to warm up that audience and get everybody in that proper mood, the receptive mood to want to come on down and win a new car. Well, I had to learn how to do that, of course. Uh, it was a special step forward for me and a big leap. And I will tell you this unexpectedly and without any hesitation, or I will tell you, Bob embraced my presence there. And I thought,
Mm.
you know, he would be standoffish because he's a star, and we're aware of his, you know, his status in the industry. But
Mhm.
Randy, come on in here, let's talk. Oh, geez,
Yeah.
I had no expectation. I went to his dressing room and talk with him, but that's how he was. On the first couple of days that I filled in, the audio people were getting their levels set. In other words, adjusting on the mixing equipment, the volume,
Mhm.
compression, limiting, equalization. These are all words that folks know, of course. But on a professional level, you need to sound right in that studio. So they wanted performance level for me. It's an empty studio, but they still want that full energy. Here it comes. And I gave them the full energy so they could set the, you know, the tonal adjustments. And then I go back to my dressing room, which had been Johnny's and Rod's, which was across the hall, just 4 narrow feet from Bob's. So I had to kind of pass his door. And he said the cutest thing to me, which is when I knew we were friends. The first time I really got a sense that I was being treated as a peer, not that I was, but certainly a peer as a fellow in the business. He said, after all that full energy delivery behind the microphone, hey, don't leave all your fight in the sparring ring. And I just thought that was just a wonderful analogy for, you know, well, it speaks for itself, at least, or your fight in the sparring ring. And there was this congeniality, a warmth, and as I say, an embrace that I felt with him from that kind of comment that was forthcoming periodically. You know, out of the blue, he would say something that was of interest, or, hey, Randy, come on in here, and we would talk about anything and everything. Including how he met Dorothy Joe, who, of course, was the love of his life. And I don't know how we got to that subject. He might have been asking me about my relationships or whatever. And it turns out that they were high school sweethearts. I was very surprised to hear that they went all the way back to their school days together. And
Mhm.
I said, how did you meet? And I haven't heard this story told ever by anybody except from Bob to me, which was, well, we were introduced by a college friend of mine on a blind date. It was he and his girl, and I was being introduced to Dorothy Joe. And oh God, I hadn't thought of him in a long time. You know, he also got into broadcasting, and I was like, "Oh, really? Who was that introduced you and was a college buddy?" He said, "Oh, it's a million years ago. There's no way you could possibly know him." And he kind of dismissed it. I said, "Did he work in New York, perhaps?" He said, "Well, indeed he did." So now I'm like, Bob, you have to tell me the name because growing up in New York, I kind of knew the personalities, radio and TV, who were local acts. And he said, "Oh, well, it was a guy named, well, he had a hit record too." He kind of started to talk about, you know, on a tangent. And he says it was a Green Door. And I said, "Oh my God, went to school with and were introduced to Dorothy Joe by Jim Lowe, Green Door, 1959, might have been Dot Records. I'm not quite sure of the label." And he said, "How would you, how?" I said, "I'm a student of this industry." Now, Jim Lowe, of course, was a radio personality in New York, in addition to the
Yeah.
other, you know, mentions that I gave. But I left Bob, you know, this guy who he hadn't thought of in half a century. Bob looked like one of the characters from a Warner Brothers cartoon with the mouth hanging open and the eyeballs sticking out, of total shock of how would you possibly know this guy who introduced me to my wife long before you were born? And I think that was just another of many moments where we cemented a little bit closer. And he took me into his confidence in a lot of different ways. And that was so special. And it manifested itself in a lot of ways, including, I couldn't believe this, day one on the show, or maybe day two, he was like, "Who's our next contestant?" He would be like, "Randy, I know you have the name of our next player. Who is that? Randy, I can always count on you. What's the name of the next player? Randy, I think you have a name to call." Guys working my name into the show, and I'm a carpetbagger. I'm there 5 minutes in comparison to Rod or Johnny Olson. And I don't know whether that was just the warmth he exuded for everybody he worked with, that professional respect and courtesy that you do with a fellow person in a show, or whether he kind of really took that kind of liking to me. It's just happenstance that we kind of clicked. I like to think it's a little bit of both, but he was so very warm. And one other quick story that just shed some light, as opposed to, gee, he was a warm guy. Gee,
You think when you slipped him that 20, that helped the cause too, or?
I couldn't afford to pay off the loan. I couldn't even come close. There were two things. All right, the scariest moment of my life was to go to work at Television City because we were parked next to each other. His nameplate, I think, was Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith. He would park under that, and I would park under Rod Roddy's name that was still there, as it should have been. But you're parking by the loading dock on a hill that slants like this, and Roger's been there, and you're familiar. I can see you nodding your head. And when you park in Rod's spot, which might be here, and his spot is next door over here, if you open your door inattentively, you bang it right into his brand new Cadillac. So every time I went to park the car, it was the most gingerly opening of the door, because you couldn't blame it on somebody at some parking lot at a supermarket. It's obvious who would have dinged his door, and it's obvious he would have noticed it within 30 seconds because his car was immaculate. It was always clean and shiny and polished. So that was a moment of deep respect. I could make or break the job by opening the car door wrong.
That's
But I'll give you one other quick insight, and again, it's more personal than just what we all have known and come to understand about Bob and have seen. It was when he stepped out on stage, and I hadn't been aware before that he didn't wear leather. We all know about his animal rights and his diet, but I didn't realize he didn't wear a leather belt or leather shoes. And he was talking about his shoes during a commercial. And he said, I just came from the doctor. My foot, I have this terrible ache in my foot, and I'm not sure what it's about. And I don't wear regular shoes. They're not leather. I was like, oh, that was interesting. I first learned that. He says, but the doctor says I have plantar something, and I'm not even a farmer. I don't even have plants. I said, well, plantar fasciitis is about a part of your foot, the plantar tendon or whatever. So I during the commercials normally didn't say much unless he asked me for something, and I just felt confident enough to say, "No, Bob, it's plantar fasciitis. It's an inflammation on the foot."
Yeah.
And he spun his head around. He says, "You sound like you know what you're talking about." And I said, "I'm sorry. I might have overstepped my bounds. I'm sorry." He said, "No. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I had that. I was doing warm-up, which is a standing job. If you speak to an audience from a seat, that's a college lecture. If you're doing an audience warm-up, you must be standing. It just doesn't work if you're trying to sit down, no matter how your feet feel." So 14, 16 hours a day at weakest link on my feet, I developed this condition called plantar fasciitis. He said, well, I had that, Bob. And Bob said, let's talk about it later, because we were coming back from commercial. And I figured, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But the producer of the show, Roger Dovkovich, came running over to me at the end of the show. He says, "Oh, Bob's serious," because they talked during the commercials that I wasn't aware of some of their conversation. It was just, "Oh no, Bob can't wait to talk to you about how to get over this plantar fasciitis, because it's a pain in the foot as well as other body parts." So I got into the dressing room on yet one more time for an intimate, relaxed, personal conversation with him. He says, "Randy, I don't understand, because I do these exercises every day. I stand on the steps, the flight of stairs, on my toes, with my heels kind of like free flowing because I'm balancing on my toes, and I lift my body up from my toes like this every day." And I said, "Well, that's why you have plantar fasciitis.
There you go.
You're doing. Let me show you the right exercise." And now we're two guys against the wall, leaning forward and stretching the tendons that need to be. It was unreal. If you said to me you'd be in that kind of relationship with Bob, I'd be like, "There's just no way," unless I was with him for a decade. But we took to that kind of a friendship and bonding very quickly.
We're going to welcome our other illustrious guests in just a second. But Roger, any stories? You've been with him, talking about somebody that was with him for decades. It's a long time. Any particular stories, whether it's The Price is Right or just Bob in general, that come to mind for you?
Yeah, very funny one. And I want to say really quickly, Wink Martindale was a client of mine for some years. And people ask me, who are your favorite clients over all your years? And the three names are always the same: Bob Barker, Wink Martindale, and Donny Osmond. Three of my most favorite clients of all time. And Wink and Sandy are friends. I was honored as I was to represent Barker, just as honored to have represented Wink, because those two men are masters at what they do. And just like Barker could never be replicated or duplicated, same with Wink. You couldn't replicate or duplicate Wink Martindale. He has a place in television history as Barker did. And I'm just blessed to be able to say I know Wink and have worked with him and call him friend. Barker went on vacation. A lot of people don't know that in the summer, Price is Right was on repeats during those days. And so he went to Europe one year for vacation, came back, and he called me up and said, "Roger, would you come over to the house? I want to meet with you." I said, "Sure." So I went over to the house and I rang the doorbell, and the door opened, and there stood behind the screen this silver-haired guy. And I looked and I said, "Barker?" And he started laughing, and instantly I knew it was him. And he opened the door. I said, "This looks fantastic." And he said, "Do you like it?" I said, "I do." And so he said, "I'm going to go over on camera and see if the network likes it. If they do, I'm going to keep it." So we fast forward, and he's doing the first show back for the new season. And he comes through the doors, first show with the white hair. He comes through the doors. The women are screaming and yelling and whistling. And he comes out and he says, he said something funny. "Do you like it?" And they scream some more. And he says, "If you don't like my hair, I can do an Indian chant. It'll go back to brown tomorrow." And after that episode, I said, "Barker, you're a sex symbol now." So he was able to make fun. He was able to have fun and enjoy what he did. Just so many memories with him, so many great moments with Barker over the years, both professionally and personally. And I'm hearing Randy talk. And I can tell Randy, I could tell you if Barker liked you, he had conversations with you. He called you into that dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
Getting called into the dressing room was the key that you knew that he liked you, because he was welcoming you into that room.
So it's kind of like when Carson called people over to the couch. It was a similar sort of feeling, huh?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Well, and I would be in there when he was getting his makeup done, and we chat. I'd stand behind the chair with we chat, and he had a great dressing room, by the way. And that World's Greatest MC was on that door, like Randy said. So everyone that came into that area knew who exactly his room that it was. So just such fun times being on the set. Just such fun times with him, and I'll never forget him.
I really appreciate the stories that you guys are sharing. Somebody else that's joining us, Adam Nadev, is here, and he is an incredible game show historian, enthusiast, author of multiple books. He's got a new book coming out as well. And we're going to welcome Adam to the show as well. And we're also going to welcome television historian extraordinaire and author Wesley Hyatt joining us. This is Wesley's return. Are you going to join the chip cookie or something? This is Wesley's return visit to the show. He was a guest. Adam, Wesley, gentlemen, thanks for joining us and our other illustrious guests here on the Jim Masters Show tonight. Adam, I'll start with you. Tell us about this thirst and hunger and love you have for the beloved game shows. How'd that all start for you?
Well, it was just something that was always there from a very, very young age. Game shows were, for whatever reason, those are the shows that just reached out to me. And I think a lot of that, in a big part, had to do with the fact that on a game show, the host is looking at the camera and talking to you. It's not like watching a cartoon or watching anything scripted where the characters are talking to each other. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But I think when you're a little kid, there's something that really gets your attention about a show where the person inside the TV screen is talking to you. And I am part of that generation that grew up with Bob Barker on The Price is Right. I'm not the kind of person that's coy about my age, but just to give you some sense here, I will say that I am just barely old enough to remember him hosting the show with dark hair. He made the transition very early in my life, but I have the memory of watching with dark hair. So that's my age. But Bob was just one of those guys that I gravitated towards, and one of those people that I just liked watching. It's very hard to zero in on Bob. He's got that skill set, but there was just something about him. You liked watching him. He was just a classic example of X Factor in television. There was something about him that you liked and that you gravitated towards. And that's part of the secret of the success of The Price is Right for so many decades.
Absolutely right. And tell us real quick about some of the books you've written on game shows.
Just very quickly, a 4-volume set, This Day in Game Show History, as well as biographies of Bill Cullen, Dennis James, Alan Ludden, and Gene Rayburn. A history of The Gong Show and the history of Chuck Barris Productions in general is coming out very, very shortly. And Game Shows FAQ is my general history of TV game shows. And I'm also proud to say that I've assisted Wesley with one of his works. And just a magnificent work about the history of Betty White's career on television.
Most people say that when they come on the Jim Masters show live, and a lot of our viewers, we welcome everybody. They're commenting. We're sprinkling a few comments. They're watching live from around the world. We call themselves the Jim Masters Show Lovities because they said when we started the show during the pandemic, the show has a lot of light, love, and levity. And I said love and levity too fast. And I said the word levity, and they jumped on it. So they're the Lovities. They watch from around the world. They're commenting. We appreciate that and love them. But when the guests come on, a lot of times they say that when they hear that they are now a Jim Masters Show Lovity, their feet start to tingle. One guest said he started to levitate. Now, when I told you, Adam, that you and the rest of the gentlemen are all Lovities on the show, I know your feet started tingling. But another reason why, Adam, you told me your feet started tingling was the fact that Wink Martindale was going to be a guest with us.
Well, this is very, very exciting. I can say that I've been in the homes of 2 of the other guests here, and on at least one of those occasions, I was invited. So this is really, really exciting to bring all of this together. But no, the irony in all this, I don't think you brought this up yet, was the fact that I was already booked for
you were
show
scheduled for earlier today, right?
And then this happened over the weekend. So I think I brought about some of the worst karma in the history of gaming by being booked for the show. And I send my sincerest apologies to everybody involved.
So Adam, for the viewers, Adam was guest scheduled for 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific today. And then when I said we're going to do a special on the life of Bob Barker and bring in some really fantastic guests with their memories, would you like to come on that instead with everybody else, since you love, game shows and write about it so much? So we did some repositioning as we put this together real fast, and Adam joined us, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And another familiar face, Wesley, of course, a phenomenal writer and author and TV historian extraordinaire. Wesley, welcome to the show, and good to see you again.
Thanks for having me back here, Jim. I don't like the circumstances of this, but I'm honored to be here with everybody. Great group here.
Now, I know you've been posting and commenting about Bob Barker as well. Tell us about Bob Barker for you.
Bob Barker for me, well, it's interesting that Adam mentioned the time, because I remember him, I think, basically when he started The Price is Right. I was around 7 years old at that time. In fact, next week is going to mark the 51st anniversary of when the new Price is Right and Gambit and also Joker's Wild debuted on CBS. And they were bringing back game shows on CBS for the first time in 4 years. And the incredible thing is that all 3 of them were big hits right out the block. Totally, so much so there. And part of that is not only the games, but also, let's give credit, if you look at it back then, Jack Berry and Wink Martindale and Bob Barker, they all were immaculately dressed, and they made the competition on NBC. As talented as Bob Clayton and Joe Garagiola was, they looked a lot older than these gentlemen did when doing the shows. And the shows were very well paced. The gentlemen knew the rules very well and could explain them very nicely. While, like, as Wink said, you've got to make good conversation with someone, but keep it moving at the same time. It's a fine art to do that, and it made a definite impression. And of course, I kept up with the show when it became an hour-long show, and as well as seeing Bob doing the years of not only the Miss Universe pageant, but also what he did for the Tournament of Roses parade, because he did that most of the 70s and 80s there with various sidekicks.
Absolutely. And you write about television overall, right? Tell the viewers and the guests who might not know that about some of the work that you do regularly.
My first book was the Encyclopedia of Daytime Television, which was ooh, eons ago, 1998. I've also written books, The Carol Burnett Show. I've also Betty White on TV recently, Bob Hope's TV career, a lot of different ones that way. And the next one was going to be on Wheel of Fortune, since it'll be 50 years old come January 2025. So I'm trying to get that out in time next year and for that anniversary as well.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So you're a lover of all of what we're talking about too, my friend, huh?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's been interesting. I think we've all been trying. I know, I think there's a few things we'd love to see. Bob hosted a show in 1958 called End of the Rainbow, which was a short-lived Ralph Edwards production. He replaced Art Baker. Art Baker gave up the show after three episodes. Said, "I don't want to do it anymore." So Ralph said, "Okay, you can get in there." I'm not sure if there's a copy of that exists. We've seen copies of The Family Game that he also did, which was on ABC in 1967 with Chuck Barris Productions, and I think Bob enjoyed talking about that as much as Wink enjoyed talking about how's your mother-in-law, and I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, and of course, and I do remember too also seeing him a lot from. They did have a lot of reruns of in first run of Truth or Consequences, which was incredible for them to have that. It was the first big hit, I'd say, that was in syndication of a daily game show. Lasted nearly 10 years. When it went off NBC in 1965, Ralph Edwards thought, this still has some life to it. Let's sell it to local stations. And they did, and it became a big hit for him. And I think that kind of helped grease the wheels for him in terms of getting the jobs there at CBS that eventually led to him being the considered for The Price is Right, because he did such a great job again on that show. Both The Truth or Consequences and The Price is Right, they were fast moving shows. They had a lot of elements you had to think of and had to explain them really quickly. And Bob was a master of doing that.
Some people have also been saying that one of the things that they miss as each of the legends, the veterans, people that have been a part of our lives all these years leave us, it's a way of being, a way of presenting yourself with the finesse and the ease and the warmth and the class and the elegance and the humor. We're in a time right now where everything is real quick hit, 10-second videos. You don't even have enough time. It takes me 10 seconds just to say hello. You know what I mean? You don't have time to really create the feeling like you used to and develop the feeling, that relationship, which is so important. Will that ever come back, or are we talking about a bygone era? Wink, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that I lost sight of what your question was. My mind was elsewhere.
You were so entranced by what I was saying and how I was saying
Absolutely.
You were levitating and your feet were tingling.
So could you ask me again?
Absolutely. Talking about the warmth and the congeniality and taking time to develop those relationships. A lot of the people that we're talking about, including yourself, had these opportunities to show, the true essence of who you are, and a warm, witty spirit, the elegance, the class, being affable, being, the person next door. Now everything is so quick and fast and 10-second videos and raw and real, where before there was a little finesse and panache to some of the things that were done. Is that a bygone era?
I think your second question was better than your first.
I do like it.
You know, somebody said to me when I was very young, discover something that you enjoy doing, truly enjoy doing,
Yeah.
and you'll never have to work a day in your life.
Right.
And that's the way I've felt about hosting and producing game shows over the years. I just really and truly can't think of anything that I would rather have done with my life than what I've done with it in the world of game shows, because I love working with people, and it's so much fun being a part of making someone happy. You know, someone walks out there and it's like, you know, you play a game with them, they get
Yeah.
some answers correctly answered, and you it's like playing Santa Claus. You know, you're
Yes.
giving away all these goodies, and it's
Yeah.
not costing you a dime, and
Absolutely.
yet you're enjoying it so much.
Well, I have to tell you, Wink and Wendy and the others, I'm sure, concur. I know for me, as a TV and radio guy, you know, various ways, shapes, and forms on air and behind the scenes all these years, I've always admired the work of folks like yourself and the Bob Barkers and the Regis Philbins and the Dick Clarks and all the others. That warmth, that finesse, that ease to make everybody else feel so good about themselves when sets were breaking apart and things were not going well. And I've had that happen multiple times on air as well. I think about, how do you handle that? What are the ways that you do it? Sure, maybe you end up pointing it out, but you do it in a humorous way that gets everybody to feel good about the fact that the bulb just broke or the set collapsed or what have you. And I've always admired the craftsmanship, the mastery of what you do and a Bob Barker and these other names have done over the years, and have always revered that. So as we celebrate Bob, we celebrate you for joining us here as well, Wink, because you are, you know, one of those icons that we love, like we do Bob Barker.
Thank you, Jim. It's really a pleasure, and I appreciate the honor of being asked to be a part of this austere group.
I appreciate that. And in the morning, I will put it in writing and I will address it management.
Yes.
Any final memories or words that you'd like to say as I don't want to take too much of your time because I know you've got a lot going on, each of you, and we'll have you all back. You're all welcome to join us here. We'll keep the porch light on for you. Roger, I know you got a lot of phones ringing and everything and faxes coming in. Faxes? Do people still fax? Anything you'd like to say, my friend?
Well, yeah, just on the point that you just made, people like Bob Barker, very few hosts like Bob Barker and Wink Martindale, there's a chemistry that they have, and you cannot manufacture chemistry. Either you have it or you don't. And the chemistry that Wink and Bob had was directly with the contestant and directly with the viewer at home. And that's why they were such a master at what they did. They were great at ad-libbing, and both Wink and Bob and Barker. And so when you have that kind of chemistry that you can connect with the people at home, and you're in their homes 5 nights a week or 5 days a week, those people do feel like they know you. And when I've been with Wink when he's interacted with fans, just like Barker, they take the time, they take the photo, they sign the autograph, they conversate with those people. That's what makes a legend from just somebody who can read a script. That's the difference. They loved what they do. Barker loved what he did. He knew the games inside and out, just like Wink did on the shows he hosted. And that's the difference in a legend and an icon versus somebody just hired to read a cue card.
Well said. Well said. I second that emotion as well. Randy?
Yeah, I just want to expand on exactly what Roger said. These guys, and Wink said it early on in this discussion, you have to like people. And the television camera is very much like a lie detector. You really can't fool all the people all the time. And if you don't like people and you don't feel it in your heart, it would be very difficult to keep up an hour of congeniality, and certainly not for 50 years. So liking people, it's going to show if you don't. And it's a real gift if you do find that joy in people. And Wink has that ability, as Bob did, to make a connection with people because there's an openness. We feel it when we see you and step on stage with you. There's a kinship, there's a like, people give off vibes, and you can read people, and there's a kindness in Wink's face and Bob as well. And I think there's a trick to it too, if I may go that far. Working with Wink on a bunch of shows and working with Bob, there's a trick to it. I'm going to reveal the trick behind the curtain here, Wink, which is
Randy, we've got a
watching-
graphic for that. It's a
Okay.
JMS exclusive. Now you
Ooh,
can do it.
wow. I expected at least some fanfare.
Da-da-da-da-da.
You watch people when they step onto the stage. In Bob's case, I would call the name and he would see who they were seated with, what they were wearing, how they came down to the contestants' row, how they carried themselves, the look in their eye. Wink, the same thing. When they step out on stage, I'm sure that you didn't meet these people before, yet you had a sense of who they are and how to make them a star. The star of a game show is not the host, it's the contestants. We all know that. And a way for that person to shine. Wink had that gift of being able to size somebody up and find something about them that would be interesting to the home audience. Bob, the same thing. Now, Bob had it easier in one way because he had a chance to see them moving and walking and talking and that kind of thing. But it's the same gift to find something in a sentence or two that relates to the home audience. What about this guy? Where are you from? I see what you're wearing. Oh, those people you were seated with. Something about them that gets them to speak about something they're familiar with and expose part of their personality. And when you say, hi, where are you from? That really doesn't do it. But Wink and Bob would find some hook of based on what they were, something they saw or observed that was able to bring out the personality. Now at home, we get a sense of they're from a farm or they're whatever it is that he latches on. At home, we relate to that. Oh, yeah, I have a cousin who does that for a living or whatever. And it's a shorthand for the folks at home to relate to the star of the show, who is the contestant. And Bob, I watched him do this. If he got a vibe off of somebody coming down, he would play it. And it always took him a sentence or two at most to find something interesting about that person to get them to expose a little bit of their personality. It's a gift. I saw Wink do it as well. And Wink had to work with whoever came out on stage. Bob had a luxury in that if he didn't get a vibe off of them, here's the next item up for bids.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe during the commercial,
Right.
There's always talk in the studio. Maybe then, now you've been down in contestants row for a couple of games. You haven't won your way up here yet. Are you feeling lucky? And then the contestant would say something off camera during a commercial that he could then use. So to identify some hook that makes them the star and exposes them to the home audience, that's a gift. And it's a thrill for me to watch that. It's fascinating to watch a good host work.
Absolutely. And especially when things go awry, when things are not as perfect as, they're
Well, that's the
planned out
gift
to
of a
be.
broadcaster.
That's
A
the best.
broadcaster
And we've all
does
had that happen to us. Yeah.
a
People will say, my
broadcaster
God,
does
that must have been awful that you got stuck in a radio station for 15 hours during a blizzard. I'm like, oh my God, that was one of the most incredible times in my life because we were dependent on to get the news out and to make people safe. And, those are the times when you're called upon to do what you have to do and glue things together and make it happen. I
And
love moments like that.
a broadcaster can rise to that occasion where an actor or stand-up comedian or somebody else is kind of challenged by that more so than a broadcaster. It looked like Roger wanted to say something.
No, and the other secret Wink and Barker had is you have to have great hair. Stage, if my hair looks as good as his, I'll be a very happy man.
Thank you, Roger.
That's it. And Adam, anything that you'd like to add? Because I know you have to.
I just want to say a few weeks ago, the power went out at the Price is Right studio in the middle of the taping. They were down for 45 minutes, and I would have given anything to see Barker handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the least connection to Bob. I never had a chance to cross paths with him personally or anything like that. But as somebody who just knew him as a viewer, one of the things that's really touched me in the last 24 hours is seeing the reaction on social media and realizing how this guy had an almost mythic quality that you don't see among game show hosts, and the way that people are reacting to it. And in a way, kind of the humor that I'm seeing in a lot of the posts. One of the most endearing things that I've seen in the last 24 hours is there's a photo of a bowl of chicken noodle soup that's going viral, and people are sharing it and saying, in Bob's memory, I'm eating a bowl of chicken noodle soup tomorrow. Because what did every child of the later 20th century and early 21st century do when they were homesick from school? They watched The Price is Right. So he's... It's very strange to say that, but yes, Bob was a critical part of every illness suffered by every child in America for the last 50 years. Thank you for being there when we needed to be entertained, Bob.
And of course, Happy Gilmore, Adam Sandler, that was hilarious as well. And he did the stunts, a lot of the stunts himself, he said, which I think was very revealing for people as well. And a phenomenal animal activist. We dug this up from Betty White's pet set. There he is with the beloved Betty White. And of course, he was on Match Game several times too. Gene Rayburn and the gang. Just really incredible. Anybody want to mention a little bit more just about his animal activism? Because that was such a big part of his life. And of course, started it with his beloved Dorothy, who we love so much.
Well, he and Nancy Burnett exposed the animal cruelty to animals on the sets in Hollywood and film and television. And we broke that with 87 or 88. And that was a really tense time because people didn't want to believe that was actually happening on sets in Hollywood. And we broke that. And so the work he did, was great. There's animals all over the world that are living in peace because of his generosity. I've been getting emails over the last several days from fans. I'm not sure how they got my email, but they've been emailing me. And this lady emailed me. It really stuck out. She emailed me last night, and she said she was a nurse in an animal hospital here in Los Angeles. And some years ago, Barker brought in a rat that had been hurt on his property. And he said, I want you to do whatever it takes to save the life of this little rat. She said, well, it's going to cost $2,000. He said, I don't care. And that's just who Barker was. His mission was to make sure animals had love and could be taken care of. He would pick them up in pet limos and get them to the vet hospital and take care of them. At one point, he had 50 basset hounds living at his home. He all rescued animals. He really was very passionate about that. And that's why he and Nancy were together for 40 years. They did such great work for animals, just like Wink's little beautiful dog there.
Oh, look who we have there, Wink. Who do we have? Who's our guest star?
This is Dude, D-U-D-E.
Dude, hey, Dude. What kind of dog is Dude?
He's a Chihuahua.
How old?
He is 8 years old.
Wow, that's fantastic. Do you see a game show host in him, or
he's
an
the love
entertainer?
of my life.
The love of your life.
I'm not going to teach him how to be a game show host because he might outdo me.
And what a cutie, huh? And Wesley, how about you? Any thoughts that you have in summary?
The main one I would think of is, and most of the others have experienced here, watching it being in the studio when they did The Price is Right with Bob was like nothing else. It was live to tape. They never stopped on the show, never did. That energy level was going so high while they're changing all these sets and props around and everything. And it was, it was just, I wish I was there listening to things during the commercials, like Randy was saying, that to hear what was going on there. But it was moved smooth as clockwork. I can't imagine watching that show and not feeling good about it afterward, even if on the occasions when both the contestants went over on the Showcase Showdown, Bob was like, well, let's go out and say something to the audience and thank everyone for doing here. I mean, he knew that show. He loved that show. He cared for that show, and he cared for his fans. And I think it's come through in the way people have reacted to his passing.
I'd like to say one thing before we wrap it up. Earlier, I mentioned the names Arthur Godfrey, Art
yeah.
Linkletter,
Yeah.
Bill Cullen, and of course the name Bob Barker. There are certain people that have been a part of this world of show business so many years, and certain people that you just feel will live forever.
Right.
And it's hard to come to grips with the loss of a gargantuan personality, the likes of Bob Barker.
Hmm.
So speaking for, I'm sure, everybody out there who's watching this, they feel the same way, and we'll miss him forever. We'll never get used to the fact that he's not with us anymore.
Absolutely. So beautifully said. I just wanted to let you guys know that no matter, you know, our backgrounds and what we've done and everything that we've shared and said this evening, once you put a beautiful dog named Dude on screen, that's it. Janet loves Dude. Maureen loves Dude. Toby loves Dude. Austin loves Dude. Janet, Maureen, Crystal loves Dude. Hi, Dude.
Never work with animals or children.
Yeah.
They won't remember any of our names. They're just going to remember Dude.
Roger, you're going to represent Dude. I think you got a great new client right there. You know,
I'm for hire. It's no problem.
This really was something extra special, and I thought maybe we would do 20 minutes or what have you, because I know you guys are very, very busy, got a lot going on. But truly, on like the day after almost of this passing, I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank each of you for taking time to stop by the show, share your memories. We're all connected. Some of you, this is the second connection we've made, and the third. Let's all stay connected. I would love to hopefully one day break bread with each of you, and we will keep the porch light on. You are welcome back to stop by the Jim Masters Show Live series. We're sort of, I think it was a few guests in the past, maybe Marion Ross or one of them said that we're sort of bringing back that lost art of conversation. And that's what we're trying to do with some warmth and levity and phenomenal people like you stopping by Levity Hall here. So thanks so very, very much.
Leave you with a laugh?
Yes.
A quick laugh? On Tic-Tac-Toe, every fall, we started the new season with an over 80s tournament where all the players were over the age of 80. And in interviewing the three players this particular day, this 96-year-old doctor, I said, Doctor, at your advanced age, do you still think about dating? Just trying to make conversation. And she said, yes, Wink. As a matter of fact, I have 4 boyfriends. I said, really? 4 boyfriends? She said, yeah. I get up in the morning with arthritis. I take a walk with Charlie Horse. I come home with Ben Gay, and that's it. That's it.
And of course, don't forget to have your pets spayed or neutered, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Population. And I want that Barker shirt. I need to get one of those shirts.
Yeah.
That is cool. I love that.
Great.
Good stuff, gang. Thank you very, very much again for joining us here on the show. Truly, Wink Martindale, game show host, entertainer, broadcaster extraordinaire, legend and icon in our industry, the incomparable Randy West, phenomenal author, broadcaster, tried and true, announcer, and so much more. Adam Native, who's a game show host, historian, author, and showing us his beautiful chair and his wonderful set. And Wesley, television historian, tried and true, brilliant author, and all around great guy. And of course, Bob Barker's publicist since 1987 and a publicist for so many incredible Hollywood veterans and legends and so many people. Roger Neal joining us as well. Thanks for gracing us with your wit and wisdom, gentlemen. And you're all welcome back. And we appreciate you being here on the Jim Masters Show.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Jim.
much, Jim.
Thank
An
you.
honor.
Yes.
An honor.
Absolutely. Wesley, thank you for joining us. And Adam and his chair, thank you. Randy, we'll see you again. Thank you for joining us as well. Wink, an honor and a pleasure, my friend. And thank you to you and Sandy. And once again, a happy anniversary to you both as well.
And let's not forget Dude.
And Dude, the star of the show tonight.
Oh.
And I hope to see you soon. And thanks for stopping by. Blessings to you and Sandy. And Roger, thank you for joining. I know you're so busy right now with all of the coverage and everything you have to do, but thank you for stopping by the show. I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you as well.
Oh, it's been awesome, and thank you thank you, by the way, for having my clients on over the years, and whoever I've got, they're yours.
I appreciate that, Roger, and thank you for repping Bob Barker all these years. You done good.
Thank you.
You take care and be well. Give the episode a big hearty like. There's a like thumbs up button on the YouTube channel. Subscribe, comment, and stop by the show again. We'll be right here waiting for you in Levity Hall and the Jim Masters Show live series. Take care and be well. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I sure did. See you again on the next episode of the Jim Masters Show. Love you all.